call to order the Petersburg Borough Assembly meeting of Monday, April 6, 2020. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Taylor?
Here.
Jay?
Here.
Jeff?
Here at home.
Bob?
Bob is excused, and he will hopefully be calling in soon. We'll alert the public when he joins the meeting.
Brandy?
Here.
Chelsea?
Here.
Mark?
Mark is excused, although he may call in later if weather conditions change.
Thank you.
For that, we have, you're welcome, 5 people in attendance. That's right now with the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I think it's item number 3, approval of minutes. There are none that I am seeing. Action item number 4 is amendment and approval of meeting agenda. There are no amendments, so I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting as presented. So moved.
Second.
And moved by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Morrell. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Yep. Okay. I'm hearing quickly the meeting agenda is approved as is. Member Lane, is that you joining? That is me, thank you. Yep, let the public be known that Member Lane has joined us. We'll hear your voice, Bob. And then let's down to item number 5. Public hearings. Public hearing for ordinance 2020-06, ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2020 budget for known changes. Any testimony regarding ordinance number 2020-06 should be given during this public hearing. A copy of the ordinance 2020-06 will be found under agenda item 14B. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Debbie, if there's anyone there to testify for that.
So Jennifer, is there anyone on the line that said they wanted to testify during the public hearing? It doesn't look like there is. Vice Mayor Stanton Greger, I do not believe there is any testimony on the public hearing.
Roger that. Thank you for your patience as we're working through this new system, and that means the public hearing is closed. Brings us to bid awards. Borough Auditing Service Award. Finance Director Chow and Manager Giesbrecht. Bear with me as I pull this open. The Borough sent out a request for proposals for auditing services in February. The RFPs were due by March 15th. We received 2 responses, with one being from our current auditor, BDO USA, LLP, and the other from Altman Rogers and Company. So Steve and Jody are recommending that the Borough continue with our current auditor, BDO USA, LLC at this time, based on the proposals submitted. The fee proposed for 2020 is $55,000 for the annual audit plus an additional $5,000 for the uniform guidance audit and for the state single audit if required. So I'd entertain a motion to approve this bid award. So moved. Second. Motion has been made by Member Michi and seconded by Member Norheim. Any discussion on the bid award? Hearing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
And Jay?
Yes. And the award passes unanimously 6-0. I'm here, Jay. Oh, Mayor Jensen. Yeah, we hear you just fine. Thanks for joining. That brings us to a full quorum of 7 with Mayor Jensen phoning in from the fishing grounds. Good to hear your voice, Mark. We're now on. Yep. We're now on persons to be heard related to the agenda. And for those listening at home, This is being done electronically through GCI right now, so there's some lapses. Be patient, as it's our first time doing this. I'll turn it back over to you and Jennifer. Debbie.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I have to say...
Oh, hey,
go ahead.
Just a reminder for those who are sitting in the waiting room to testify, we ask you to keep the testimony to 5 minutes and be respectful to those present. That's all.
Okay, I just sent a message, so we'll see if we get our first caller here. I believe it may be Mr. Beebe.
I'm great. Hello, can you hear me? Mr. Beebe, this is Joe Stanton Rader. Please state your name and who you represent. And as you know the drill, you got the floor. Okay, thank you. My name is David Beebe. I'm representing myself, and I'm also passing on some concerns of individuals who are extremely worried about their personal health and public safety connected with non-essential activities being authorized within the Forest Service chain of command. These include authorizing non-essential travel and workplace gatherings occurring in both the Petersburg Ranger District building and the supervisor's office buildings, and which appear to be in violation of the standing shelter-in-place rules. Given the recent unresolved documented failures of the Petersburg Ranger District to abide by agency-required protocols and federal laws governing the management of public forests, and given the refusal of the agency to provide any forensic auditing evidence whatsoever, so that we can be assured of personal and professional accountability as occurring, it would seem incumbent upon the borough to have a means of establishing its own system of accountability. I see this as a practical necessity for the management of public safety, and especially to provide our healthcare protectors with a notion of how and why agency activities are being authorized, and perhaps allow for a method by which we can, record, who traveled where, when, so there can be, some form of a notion of how things need to proceed under the pandemic situation. Okay, well, thank you for the opportunities. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Beebe. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on visitor news related to today's agenda?
Okay, hang on 1 second, please. I'm checking to see if there's someone else here.
No problem, Debbie. Take your time. We're all working through this at the same time here. It's all good.
Okay, I believe we may have Kathy Reamer on the phone.
Sounds good. You there, Kathy?
My operator is saying maybe Kathy has her mute on. We're not sure.
Kathy, if you can hear this, please unmute yourself. Love to hear you.
Hi, Kathy Reamer. I'm here specifically for the meeting hospital board, which I believe is later on in the agenda.
Okay, good enough, Kathy. We'll hold on then till the special meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
So I think that's all we have then. Thank you very much.
Okay. With that, then we'll go to persons to be heard unrelated to the agenda. Do you have anybody who'd like to speak to the items unrelated? Clerk Thompson?
I don't believe so. I think the other two callers on the line would like to speak under the special meeting, so I'll cross my fingers that I'm correct on that.
Sounds good. And if we need to adapt a little bit, we will if we miss on something.
Thank you.
That will bring us to board, commission, and committee reports. Clerk Thompson, I believe you sent us an email just a couple minutes ago regarding that.
I did, yes. I had unfortunately forgot to attach something to the agenda. So under Utility Director Hagerman and Public Works Director Cotta's report under 11C, please refer to the memo that I emailed you.
Sounds good. With that, then, that'll bring us down to the consent agenda, and there is nothing on that. With that, it brings down to 10A.
Oh.
Appointment, point of order, Mr. Mayor. Yes, consent agenda has one item on it. Am I seeing that right?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I took that backwards. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, sorry. The consent agenda has the appointment of Ellen Malone to the Local Emergency Planning Committee. Pittsburgh Local Emergency Planning Committee is requesting Assembly approval to appoint Ellen Malone, who is employed as Icicle Seafood Safety and Environmental Manager, to the facility owner-operator seats previously held by Roxanne Stafford. And I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Thanks, and then the motion is seconded by Member Lynn. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes.
Agenda item.
Yes, Chelsea?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Thank you.
That passes unanimously, 7-0, and thank you, Ellen Malone, for your service. We really appreciate it. That brings us to report of other officers. At this point, we'd like Central Medical Center CEO, Full Hospital, to provide an update on the medical center. Thank you, Phil. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right, as you know, we had our first positive COVID response in Petersburg yesterday, which we sent notification out. I want to thank a lot of folks at Borough, Carl, and Sandy, a lot of the departments as well, and probably too many folks to name, but we have incredible collaboration, and obviously it's very vital in this crisis. Every day we're reporting out at the KFSK Daily radio show the number of tests, positives, and pending. Currently, just for informational, we have 46 tests out, one positive returned, and we still have 5 pending. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the some of the challenges with this, with the virus and COVID-19. We struggle, as every hospital in the nation is struggling on returned lab results. So we may have a test that's collected, sent out to commercial labs or to the state, depending on where it's going. And the turnaround times are getting better, but we still struggle with rapid turnaround times. And I'll give an example of the shortness of supplies that are out there. So currently we do have a piece of equipment on our premises in the lab that has the capability to test on site. However, the company cannot put out the cartridges in the medium fast enough for us to test and to give us those cartridges. There's only one hospital in the state of Alaska that has those with this particular unit. It's called the Cepheid unit. And it's just to give you a picture of how challenging it is on the healthcare side and in what we're dealing with, and how you're hearing those things in the nation, but it also trickles down to Petersburg as well. same is true for personal protection equipment. We have spent a considerable amount of time in preparation for our surge, medical surge, in the event we have our first COVID admission in the hospital. We have been doing things like separating locations in the facility for COVID areas and non-COVID areas. We've created an essential bubble in long-term care to keep residents away from any transmission. We've recreated our OR rooms and other rooms in our facility in preparation for this as well. In addition to that, we're looking at things like burn rate. So, for example, if someone comes in and they are a positive admission, how many PPE or personal protection equipment will be gone through in the care of that patient on a daily basis. So we're firming up all those protocols. Our nursing staff is doing an amazing job in preparation for this. They've gone through mock protocols, scenarios where we're looking at those things like burn rates in preparation for this. So I can't state that enough as far as our staffing. It's amazing. We have our outside triage area for a respiratory clinic that is going. If anyone has any questions on COVID, we ask to call the hotline, 772-5788. And we have professionals on that line that can help triage and talk you through and answer any questions. We're working on an emotional support line as well this week, so that's something that we'll put some information out there. There's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of questions, and we want to make sure that we can provide a number for access and talk to a professional as well. Our staffing on site, we're very fortunate. We felt very fortunate to enforce some of the strict quarantine rules at the beginning a couple of weeks ago. We continue to feel strongly to stay ahead of recommendations even that are provided by the state or trickled down by the CDC. And specifically, I'm talking about the guidelines for the essential personnel traveling into our area. At our facility, we have a lot of concerns about the quarantine or the guidelines that don't mandate quarantine for 14 days. They can go right to work. We strongly support stricter guidelines where anyone coming into Petersburg is quarantined for 14 days. This is not just, the anticipation of the cannery workers, but also any essential personnel coming into Petersburg. I know that's a hard one, but this is a pretty serious virus, and we want to make sure we protect the community, our staff, and make sure we have the resources needed in the event that we do have an admission. And with that, I think I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Phil. Are there any questions for Mr. Hofstetter? Well, thank you so much for taking the time again today, and appreciate all the effort and effort from your staff. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
With that, we'll go down to 11B. CIPA Board Member Lynn, Assembly and CIPA Board Member Lynn will provide an update on CIPA activities. With that, the floor is yours, Member Lynn.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had an all-day meeting last week, CIPA did, and I just want to report out a couple items to keep it brief. One of them is that we have the submarine cable that goes to Petersburg from Tyee. It affects none of the other communities. I've talked earlier about it, but one of the cables had broken, and we were trying to look to see what we do for a backup. The decision's now been made that we will go try to lay a new cable. So we're back working with Corps of Engineers because we have new locations for this cable that would come across. And we're also putting out an RFP looking for a company to come in and lay a new cable across. we're concerned about with the situation we have, that we probably will not get this done till probably sometime. Hopefully we can get it done September, October, before the weather really changes. But it's all dependent on, the current conditions and whether or not we can bring a company in, whether or not we get bids on it. But we've got the requests out now for quotations on the thing. That's the first item. The second one, and for the listeners out there who haven't been involved with this, we're okay now. We're in pretty good shape. But if we lose one of the cables that we have now currently coming across from Wrangell, then we are totally on diesel power, and our rates go from 6.8 cents to 30 plus cents, to give you an idea of the difference. Second item I want to talk about is we've done snow surveys at both behind Swan and both Tyee. We have, to give you an idea, to put this in perspective, about 35 inches of rainfall, or of inches of actual water behind there right now. So that equates to give you an idea, about 75 feet of water coming into Tyee. And we have about 38 feet coming into Swan. So we're looking right now really good for the summer. Based on that, the board, we're about 2 weeks from the turn, meaning that the snow melt will start on Swan because of soil elevation first. We're concerned about having to put Ketchikan on diesel power, and so what we've done is we've agreed to back it up if need be out of some power from Tyee, because there's plenty of water, we think, sitting there to take care of the needs. With that, I'll move on to just a couple other items. Our SEPA staff is located in a building with about 5 other offices in Ketchikan. One of the offices in Ketchikan had 2 of their employees who came down with the actual COVID-19. As a result, our offices, the whole building was closed down immediately within 30 minutes after it was identified. The whole building went through a fumigation and so forth. Our employees were not allowed back in for 2 weeks. And so we're just beginning to be able to go back in and access files and put things back on track again. But as Phil said, it's pretty serious. And I think we've done as much as we possibly can to protect our employees. I am concerned about essential workers. If we need somebody to come into those plants or so forth from outside for, the types of things that we don't have the experience with, we've still got to find a better way to handle the essential workers. And I agree with Phil. We need to, keep pulling at it for a little bit. And with that, I'll quit and open it for any questions you might have.
Questions from Member Lynn?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it's Jeff.
Yep, go ahead.
Hey, Bob, is the new cable that that SEPA's going to lay, is that just one leg cable, or is that a cable with 3 legs in it?
It's a cable with 3 legs. The technology we used when we laid those 30 years ago has totally changed. So the one cable will have all 3 phases in that single cable.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from Member Lynn? Right on. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. That brings us down to 11C, Utility Director Hagerman and Public Works Director Cotta. They will give us an update on the status of the proposed 2020 utility rate increase and bond issuance. With that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay? This is Scott Hagerman.
Clear as day.
Okay, great. Thanks. So the memo that was to be in the packet didn't make it in there. So I would like just to read the memo to the Assembly and the public, and then open it up for questions if that's okay. So the memo is from myself and Chris Cotta, Public Works Director, in regards to 2020 rate increases and bond issuance. As the Assembly is well aware, the sanitation, water, wastewater, and power and light utilities of the borough have many important projects to attend to. In order to fund the work, rate studies have been contracted and rate increases to fund various projects in various stages of development. Related to this process, a bond issuance process was planned for funding the Blind Slough hydroelectric project upgrades. All of these actions are required to complete the work of the utilities and maintain reliable operation of our systems, but do have the effect of increasing monthly payments from our customers for services rendered. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there is a high level of concern in the community in regard to financial stability of businesses and individuals during and following the trajectory of the virus's effect to society. The local utilities had already taken steps to forego service disconnections and eliminate late penalties for our customers before the state had also mandated a prohibition in service disconnects related to COVID-19 financial struggles. Both of these are good actions to weather the storm of lessened earnings by many people in our community. Further, the utilities recognize the hardship that rate increases can represent for customers during this extraordinary time and recommends to the Assembly to delay and postpone discussions regarding rate increases or bond issuance until further notice and after we return to a state of normalcy for the community and our local businesses. This recommendation acknowledges that some projects that are still in the planning stages will be delayed in their development and completion. Projects that have been awarded will proceed in as much as possible under the various health mandates and regulations, with the possibility that work may be delayed due to the wide-reaching impacts of the pandemic. Please let us know if there are any questions. And with that, I'll just open it up to questions.
Thank you, Dr. Hagerman. Are there any questions for Carl?
This is Bob Lynn. I want to say, Carl, thank you for delaying those and seeing what we can do to help ease the situation out. We much appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions for Dr. Hagerman? Right on. Thank you again, Carl, for that. Pardon me, to scroll down. Since we've got you there, Carl, if we down to 11D, Incident Commander Hagerman will update the Assembly and Emergency Operation Center activities. Take it away, Carl, with the other hat.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just wanted to go over some things. This is the first official report, I guess, on the EOC since it's been stood up in an Assembly meeting. So I just wanted to go over a couple things. So we have a really good team in place. As Phil said, his and his staff are doing an outstanding job at the hospital. We have assembled a team to support and extend our help to the medical center as much as possible. We've got people in planning and logistics and finances and operations that are all focused on the problem at hand. Our Public Information Officer, Tara Alcock, is doing a fantastic job pushing out the multitude of information pieces that we have gotten and are important to the community to understand. It's been an excellent team effort, and I just wanted to let the Assembly know that the team is really working hard to try and make this as smooth as possible. There's a lot of changes for us, so we're working hard to make sure that those go well. I wanted to mention just our overriding objectives as an EOC, and make sure that the Assembly knew what we were working on, and so that we have presently 6 objectives, which include containing and mitigating spread of the virus to allow more time for testing or vaccine and reduce strain on medical facilities. So we have objective number 2 is simply care for sick, which is not simple in its carry out, so that is a big one. Objective number 3 is plan, prepare, and perform sample collection and shipping for testing for COVID. Number 4 is provide public information, which again is also a very large endeavor. Number 5 is mitigate economic and community impacts, which carry a lot of
important aspects to it, including financial assistance for small businesses and consideration of homeless impacts from the COVID-19 virus. And the last one of our objectives is maintain essential community infrastructure operations. These are the overriding objectives that we are focused on, and it is a multitude of subtopics under each one of those that we are trying to address and carry forward good ideas on a weekly basis. Our operational periods are week by week, and so every week we set new emphasis and try to carry through and make headway on various aspects. Lastly, I just wanted to, in light of Phil's report regarding the first positive confirmation of COVID in Petersburg, just reiterate to the community that we have been doing well on our behaviors and new habits for social distancing and hygiene, and that is really what it comes down to, is that the community must continue to do those things and provide that separation. There are definitely things that we can do as a community to help each other out, and we should do those things with kindness and respect for each other. And as long as we do that, we're going to get through this just fine. Everybody needs to have patience. This issue is not going to go away in 2 weeks. It will be around for months now. We don't know when it will end, so everybody needs to have a high level of patience with each other and the situation that we're in. The better we do, the better off we'll be. And I will be able to talk more about mandate issues that Phil discussed or mentioned when we get to the discussion at the end of the meeting regarding mandates. We'll be able to provide more information at that time. But are there any questions for me or any part of the EOC?
Questions for Director Hagerman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 3, please.
Go right ahead.
Hey, so Carl, have we heard anything from the state about letting us fall into the umbrella of the smaller communities that can do more restrictive actions?
No, not yet. I did get a memo to our lobbyist on Friday morning, and Ray Matiszewski is our lobbyist in Juneau, did a fantastic job of pulling strings and priming the pump. So when that memo came out, within 3 minutes, it was in front of Commissioner Crum, Dr. Zink, Governor's Chief of Staff, really everywhere that it needed to be to get some consideration to raise the population limit in that health mandate number 12 so that we could consider Petersburg a small community and have more latitude for mandates. As of today, this morning, Ray Matiszewski has not heard back from the state, but he is continuing to apply pressure where needed, and hopefully we'll hear something on that soon. Also note on that issue, Randy Rivaro, who is in Senator Stedman's office, is also bringing that issue forward to the governor's office, and will be pushing the issue as well.
Thanks, Carl. The other question I had is the incident command staff, both at the hospital and in the borough, are there steps in place to train people in the event that some of the key leadership or all the leadership in both organizations are unable to do their incident command stuff? Are we training people to kind of fill in behind those folks?
Well, that's a good question. The department heads of the borough have all been tasked with completing the IC courses, the ICS courses in the past. And the way that ICS is set up is that so anybody that's taken the course conceivably can carry out a role in the IC system. So it is no direct training training of each position in the IC team right now has happened. But again, the theory is that anybody with ICS training can step in and perform a role that is common to the incident command system.
Okay, thanks, Carl. And my last question is, last week we got a letter from Chris Barrows, that's the president of the Pacific Seafood Processors Association, which is, I think, the parent company for Trident, about a plan that they're trying to put together to bring workers into town. Will the borough and the hospital incident command staff get that plan before people start arriving? And will the borough and the hospital IOC staff, will they be notified when employees come to town?
That is a good question as well. I do believe that we will get written copies of plans from Trident and Icicle Seafoods before any processors come to town. I know they're working very hard on it. There's a lot of details to address, and I'm aware that Dave Omer is working very hard at Trident. The Trident has a corporate plan in place, but the local Trident folks are working on the local plan for Petersburg, and I know that they're planning on bringing people in a couple weeks ahead of time so they can quarantine. Icicle has also got a few people working on their plan as well, and for all my knowledge, I do believe that they're planning on providing that plan to us ahead of the processing season.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hagen. Any other questions for Carl?
I have one.
Go ahead, Member Tremblay.
I'm curious what kind of communication we've been having with our federal delegation, either our lobbyists or the senators or the representatives or congressmen, regarding the supply issue that we are seeing on the ground. Is there any communication that way happening?
So could you elaborate on the supply issue that you're talking about?
Well, specifically what Phil mentioned with the cartridges, that if we could be testing in town, we just don't have access to those. Are we communicating the situation on the ground with people? Because this is a national, international issue, so I understand we have more direction with regards to state actions, but are we communicating to federal actors what the situation is on the ground so that they can be trying to put any pressure where they can to be, especially even with regards to the jurisdiction at the airport, traveling, having a national stay-in-place order, that kind of thing? Do we have any, is that on us as the Borough Assembly, do you believe, rather than you as the Incident Command? Like, what do you... Because I'm seeing the state in reaction to federal agencies, and is there any way that we can be helping influence that at the borough level?
Okay, thank you for explaining that a little bit further. The IC team has not been in communication with our federal delegation. Although that's not a bad idea, and it's really been so much change, coming at us every day that it's very hard to think of everything. But I like that idea, and I do believe that those kind of communications need to come from our elected body, and so I can forward some recommendations to Steve and the mayor for items to talk to our lobbyists about and our delegation.
Is it okay if I speak? This is Phil.
Yeah, chime in, Phil. Quick aside before you speak. Phil, you and Carl both, anything related to COVID, chime in anytime you want. We want your feedback, so go ahead.
Yeah, Carl is doing a great job explaining everything. Just an aside, I did actually reach out to at the state level and Murkowski's office. I had a state someone at the state level was able to help me communicate that to Murkowski's office as well. I did try to go down that avenue, but the allocation of those supplies and the priorities of those, there was no movement on that. I think it is a very good idea. The reason I focus on the tests specifically is because if you're looking at a population that has not yet exhibited an outbreak, then tests are very appropriate, and responses back from those tests are very appropriate to make sure we know to contain a spread, for example. So I would support a lobby action to be able to obtain specifically the test to turn it around.
Thanks, Phil. Chelsea, does that answer your question?
Great, thank you.
I know. Yes, go ahead, Mark.
I just received an email this morning from Nils Andreasen from the Alaska Municipal League, and the Conference of Mayors, the State Conference of Mayors, is going to have 2 teleconferences coming up this week, and I'm hoping I can attend the one on Friday, the 10th. And with the 2 senators and Congressman Young, and they are curious to know what our needs would be. So if I can call into that, I will. If I can't, maybe Vice Mayor Stanton-Berger can on our behalf, and maybe get a list of things that the Kingsford Medical Center and DOC are concerned with at this point.
It's a great idea, Mark. Let's coordinate with the appropriate parties, and then whichever one of us is able to be on Friday, we'll do so. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, I will keep you in the loop as to where I am at the time, so hopefully I'm home, but we'll see.
Sounds good. But a great plan. Any other items?
Mr. Mayor, this is Bob, and could we add to that? There's a couple other things in discussions about money available from the feds in certain different pockets about, communities and so forth. Some of those monies are going to be gone. They were very much underfunded. And I would suggest that we allow Liz and maybe Jody to chime in to add any other items onto that list that would help our community, particularly our businesses and so forth, that may be left out or may not have been seen as part of those, the money package that came out.
That makes sense, Linda Lynn, having our financial director and economic development director focus on that. I think that sounds fine.
Thank you.
Absolutely. One more time, any other questions for Incident Commander Hagerman on his report? Right on. Carl, you and Phil, like I said before, feel free to jump in at any point in a COVID-related thing if there's a need for clarification. Don't feel need to wait till someone's done. Jump in. It'll be good. So thank you for your efforts, Carl, and everyone working. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, you bet. So it's not the mayor's report. All I really wanted to do today was acknowledge our community and all the efforts being done by the paid professionals focusing on this every day, all day, and on the broader community. We talk a lot about flattening the curve to minimize the impact on our community. We have a true and real opportunity if we all work together to not flatten the curve, but to crush it. To wear a mask and we're out in public, to practice strong social distancing, to really respect the mandates that are out. If we do that, we can crush this curve and really, really mitigate the damage to our community. So I encourage everyone, like Director Hagerman said, to be patient and kind with one another. It's a new existence we're living in, and that's just going to have to be that way from now on. And if we treat each other like neighbors, we'll come out of it as neighbors. So I really implore the community to keep doing what you're doing that way. I've seen so much kindness in town over the last weeks, and keep it up. Keep being good neighbors. That's how we'll get through this thing together. Anyway, check out one of those, long story short. Manager's report. There isn't one for the meeting, but I don't know if Steve's in attendance if you want to chime in at all.
Just glad to be back in the office. Hopefully it stays that way.
Glad to have you back, Steve. I'm glad that your quarantine is done. Good to hear your voice as well. All right. That brings us to unfinished business. Ordinances for third and final reading. Ordinance 2020-03, an ordinance adopting the Alaska Remote Solar Sales Tax Code and amending provisions of Chapter 4.28 for purposes of consistency. This ordinance has been approved unanimously in its first two readings. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Member Ricci and I believe seconded by Member Norheim. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you.
And that passes unanimously on third and final reading. That brings us to 14B, Ordinance 2020-04, an ordinance amending Petersburg Municipal Code to Chapter 3.48 titled Parks and Recreation Department to reflect Borough Incorporation. This is also approved unanimously in its first two readings. I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move.
Second.
Moved by Member Nucci and seconded by Member Lynn. Discussion. Okay.
Hey, Jay?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Hey, can we just get a brief update on what this is?
Yeah. I'll briefly speak to it. This one is just transferring, and Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong at any point, old city code language to reflect Borough Incorporation. It's a housekeeping item.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Right on. Thanks for the clarifier. And will the clerk call the roll?
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Thank you.
And it passes unanimously. To Ordinance 2020-05, an ordinance adopting the new Petersburg Municipal Code, Chapter 3.49, titled Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. I'll read this briefly here. If adopted, Ordinance 2020-05 will establish a new Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. As written, the ordinance provides for a 5-member elected board. Ultimately, the ordinance can be amended to provide for a 5-member appointed board if the Assembly desires. In the case of an appointed board, the Assembly would seek letters of interest in the current board members. Board members' terms would still apply. Ordinance 2020-05 was unanimously approved in its first reading. I entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Member Norheim and seconded by Member Tremblay. Discussion. And with that, I think for the ease of things, now we're getting into more the meat of it, I'm going to go down the Assembly list of from who was sitting there. So start with you, Benucci.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Hey, anyway, I'm not going to be voting in favor of this ordinance at this time. You know, while I understand the importance of advisory boards in certain businesses, you know, I'm still not sold on the idea of a Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. The last Parks and Recreation director we had wasn't really in favor of a Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and the meetings that I went to with the Friends of the Parks and Recreation, none of those folks really wanted to be on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Boards. I'd like to see Steve get through with his detailed look at what's going on at Parks and Recreation, and if we get to the point later down the line when that might be a good idea, I'd be in support of doing something like that. But at this point, I'm not ready to vote in favor of a Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Nucci. Member Tremblay, anything to chime in on?
Yeah, so first thing of note is I believe, and Debbie, please correct me if I'm wrong, that boards are currently suspended for public health and safety reasons. Is that correct?
Board meetings, that is correct.
Yeah, so I think we should still be doing this because right now we have an acting director who was pretty recently even brought into the Parks and Recreation office, relatively speaking. So I think that as we look around at our current situation and we think about where we will be at when public meetings are reinstated, it's going to be taking teams of folks getting together to talk through a lot of issues, and having a standing elected board at that time or appointed board at that time would do a lot of good for overall guidance for next steps. Right before the pandemic started uprooting our conversations, we've been having a lot of conversations with instructors regarding the policies with IRS taxes and how to be non-employees and that kind of a thing. So we were already about to get inundated before everything kind of blew up into a different universe with feedback from instructors. As assembly members, right, we were getting these conversations, and that's not our role as an assembly. I don't believe it is. I think it can be better handled at a micro level. And so, reminder that there is a built-in sunset clause where if a board is formed and the meeting doesn't happen within a year, it does dissolve. So even if you yourself, I would ask assembly members, feel that somehow you personally don't see the benefit of it, is thinking beyond that of who could be interested in this and the overall benefit of it. There's basically zero harm in forming it and allowing it to potentially proceed when public meetings are back on the docket. So I'm happy to engage with people on the concept further, but I strongly believe that giving people a platform for this formal form of organizing can only be a benefit as we deal with a lot of uncertainty and, frankly, a lot of park and rec use at this point, the trail systems and our outdoor spaces. I know I believe some of the jungle gyms or some of the playgrounds are beginning to be closed for sanitation concerns. So might forgive me for not having those details offhand. But anyway, more teams the better, and in my opinion, I'm happy to discuss it looking forward to hearing other people's thoughts.
Thank you, Member Tremblay. Member Morrell.
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with putting this out there. I mean, I don't know if there will be people, but just like Chelsea said, if there's not enough people and they don't meet, it will dissolve on its own. And I think that an advisory board would have been great for the previous director, and maybe things wouldn't have been such a mess. So I am in favor of this, and like I said, if there's not enough interest, it's going to dissolve on its own anyway, so I don't see the harm in putting it out there.
Thank you, Member Morrell. Mayor Jensen.
I have mixed feelings on this. I remember back when we formed the Borough, and this was one of the advisory boards that we didn't see as being functional and didn't have a lot of attendance or people interested in being on the board, so it wasn't put in place when we formed the Borough. I agree there was some confusion or some issues that the advisory board could have handled with the last director. I think currently with the manager acting as director of Parks and Rec would be fine to let it stand at that. And once we get past this situation we're in and get back to some life that's more normal, if we feel we need a board to set up recommendations for redesigning Parks and Rec department, I think we can do that with an ad hoc committee from the public. So I don't think I'm going to be voting in favor of this at this time.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. Member Norheim.
Yeah, pretty much in line with Chelsea and Brandy there. Also, in regards to it was removed because there was not interest in it then. Well, then is not now, and there seemed to be plenty of interest not too long ago, at least in putting opinions out there. So, we'll vote for it. Like they said, it will disappear if there's no interest. So, I see no reason to vote it down.
Member Norheim, Member Lynn.
Thank you. When we got into the current situation of the concerns of of people at the pool and so forth, I had a chance to take a look at what we were doing and the cleanliness and so forth of it. And I came away from all that thinking that we really need to go back to basics. We're trying to do way too much for everybody, and we can't do it. And so I totally support the manager's efforts to bring this back into something that we can afford. If we go with an advisory board, the advisory board will want to add more things back in, and at this time, I frankly don't believe we should be doing that. I think we need to go back and see what we can afford first, and then if we need to do something on an ad hoc basis, I think that's great. So where I'm at is I would like to see us continue the effort that we're working on. Folks are willing to can talk to us at any time. There's nothing stopping that. I think that the manager comes forward with a recommendation. There's also been recommendations that we do something different than even fill in the director position, and I think that's one that needs to be discussed. So I'm not in favor of it at this point in time. I think there are way too many questions, and I think it needs to wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Lynn. I'll weigh in here now. I tend to agree with different points all of you guys have raised at this point. That's what you, Member Lynn. I think that we look at a lot of different things, and there is inherent risk of the board wanting more. In a nutshell, right now, obviously the Parks and Rec Advisory Board doesn't do a whole lot for us today. It isn't relevant really in the short run. But the part I can't get over is why I will be voting for this is I can't see any harm. Member Norheim spoke to the fact of was a lack of interest then, and that isn't today. It's true. Now isn't then. At least we don't know if it is. And I really like the clauses written in there, but if we can't have a functional advisory board, it gets dissolved. In short, I call it a zero risk, potentially some kind of reward thing. And if the board does come forward with recommendations and wanting, as Member Lynn spoke to, more things added that we can't afford, well, it's our job as an assembly then to disseminate that information and act accordingly, because again, it's only an advisory board. So I will be voting for it today. And we will have one more reading if it does pass. And any member of the public have opinions on it, I hope they share it with. I'll just open the floor to see if anyone else wanted to chime in again or if they were good. Okay, clerk, call the roll. I would just like to point out that this is the third and final reading.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Marcus Twice had my back on that. I appreciate it. Thank you. Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Oh.
Jeff?
No.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
No.
Thank you.
That passes 4-3 with Mayor Jensen, Member Michi, and Member Lynn opposed. All right. Now that brings us down to ordinances for second reading. Item D, ordinance 2020-06, an ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2020 budget for known changes. If approved, ordinance 2020-06 will amend the 2020 budget to authorize the expenditure of $72,118 from the Property Development Fund to repair the Aquatic Center, heat exchanger, and air handling system. The transfer of $43,000 from the General Fund to the Parks and Recreation Fund to pay for additional electric and water costs incurred due to a pool leak, and to to quote a $464,551 payment from the Borough's liability insurance carrier, APEI, and a possible expenditure to the motor pool design construction capital project fund in FY 2020. Ordinance 2020-06 was approved unanimously in its first reading. I entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Norheim. And in fairness to you, Jeff, I'll go the other direction as fund on the table. We'll switch it up. I'll start with you, Member Lynn.
No comments.
Thank you, sir. Member Norheim.
Well, it's probably a great time to fix that thing since nobody's in there right now.
I'll do it. Thank you, Member Norheim. Mayor Jensen.
I've got no comment.
Thank you, sir. Member Merrill.
No comment.
Member Tremblay. Thank you, Member Merrill.
No comment.
Member Mucci.
Nothing here, Jay.
Sounds good. I was briefly saying, Member Norheim says that well. This is a great time for us to get working on that because there's nobody in there. So, Pat, the clerk, please call the roll.
Randy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob? Bob?
Yes.
Thank you. Chelsea?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
And that passes unanimously in its second reading. All right. And brings us to old business, 15A. Ordinance 2020-09, an emergency ordinance amending the fiscal year 19 and 20 budget to establish a local emergency disaster fund and approve an emergency appropriation into the fund to respond to the COVID-19 outbreak. I'll briefly describe it. Emergency Ordinance 2020-09, if adopted, will establish a local emergency disaster fund and approve an emergency appropriation of $200,000 for the fund to respond to the outbreak. Establishing the fund will allow the Borough to track expenses that may be reimbursed by the federal government. The emergency ordinance will be effective immediately upon adoption, which takes only one reading and will continue in effect for 60 days unless sooner repealed. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Has been moved by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Lynn. Back then to the table. Jeff, we'll open with you for discussion on this one.
Sure, thank you, Mr. So, a question that I have is that 2020-09 and 2020-10, are these related ordinances?
Yes, they are. And Finance Director Tao, you have been unmuted, so you can speak as well if you would like to answer any of these questions.
Okay, thank you. For Jeff, the first ordinance A, it's an emergency ordinance, and it's only good for 60 days. So we have to have introduced the second ordinance, which is a permanent ordinance that will take 3 readings. So that's the only difference.
Okay, thank you. So there's $200,000 in this fund, and what are some of the, either on 2020-09 or 2020-10, what are some of the items that these funds could be spent on?
Sure. Mostly emergency PP&E, cost of disinfection, overtime for emergency personnel. FEMA categorizes it as expenses, category B, emergency type expenses. I might want to chime in more to this, but it's pretty selective. And we hope by transferring this $200,000 into this fund, up to 75% of it will be reimbursed by FEMA at a later date.
Thank you.
Anything else, Jeff?
Nothing else.
Thank you, sir. That brings us on to Member Tremblay.
No comment. Thank you for putting this together, though. This is going to be, we'll be glad we did this.
Thank you, Member Tremblay. On to Member Morrell.
No comment.
Thank you, Brandy. Mayor Jensen.
Pass.
Thank you, sir. Member Norheim.
Yes, she had said that the second one, 2010, was the more permanent version. So does that mean that we will have forevermore a emergency planning budget set aside if that second, 2010 passes?
It just means that we're going to have expenses next fiscal year. The emergency ordinance, the one you're looking at right now, only lasts for 60 days, and so right at the end of May, and we're going to unfortunately have more expenses going into later this fall, most likely. So.
Okay.
Anything else, Member Norheim?
No, that's all.
Thank you, sir. Member Lynn.
Pass.
I just wanted to frankly echo what Member Tremblay said. I wanted to thank the Finance Department for being proactive in their thinking and how to get us reimbursed from the federal government for some expenses that we incur. So I just want to say appreciate your efforts for it. With that, the clerk, please call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
That passes unanimously. Which brings us to 15B, Ordinance 2020-10, an ordinance amending fiscal year 2019-2020 budget to establish a local emergency disaster fund to respond to the COVID-19 outbreak. As stated before, this one is being established to disaster fund to respond to COVID-19 outbreak extending past the 60-day emergency ordinance approved above. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Norheim. Start with you, Member Lynn, for discussion.
I'll pass.
Member Norheim. Thank you, Member Lynn.
Pass.
Mayor Jensen.
Just one comment. Coming back to Member Norheim's question about if this would be in place in perpetuity. The last part of the ordinance is just presented. It says disaster fund to respond to the COVID-19 outbreak. So I think it would end after this situation is past us. But that's all.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. Member Morrell.
Pass.
Member Tremblay.
No comment.
Thank you, Chelsea. Member Mucci.
Nothing here, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, also pass. Pretty self-explanatory. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Chelsea?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And that passes unanimously. And next item C, Ordinance 2020-11. Ordinance approving the borough's participation in a proposed refinancing by the Alaska Municipal Bond Bank of its general obligation bonds, 2010 series. One issued in two series, one tax-exempt and one taxable, which provided funds to purchase the City of Petersburg's general obligation electric utility bond, 2010 Series A tax-exempt, and the 2010A bond, and the City of Petersburg general obligation electric utility bond, 2010 Series B taxable Build America bond, the 2010B bond, under a loan agreement between the city and the bond bank, authorizing the borough manager and finance director to enter into a new loan agreement with the bond bank, setting forth a revised debt service schedule with respect to the loan, evidenced by the 2010A bond, the 2010B bond, in accordance with the 2010 loan agreement. The bond bank successfully refinanced the 2010 bonds, authorized authorizing the issuance of a new bond or bonds to the bank to evidence the refinance loan and establish an effective date. That was a heck of a mouthful, and read the bottom part of it here briefly. General obligation bonds are eligible to be refunded. The Municipal Bond Bank is working with communities, including Petersburg, to facilitate the transaction due to the low market rates. There's projected $270,000 in savings to the Petersburg Electric Department over the next 10 years until maturity of the bonds. Recommended would entertain a motion to approve the funding of Petersburg's 2010 General Obligation Bond Series 2010A1 and 2010B1.
So moved.
So moved by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Lynn. Before we get into discussion, Jody, could you speak briefly to the large mouthful that this is? Roll call.
Hey, we're getting Jody unmuted again. Hang on 1 second, please.
Oh, no problem. There, Jody.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, go right ahead, and thank you.
Okay, so in 2010, Power and Light issued bonds for the standby diesel generator and some other capital projects. Well, they qualify because of the low interest rates to refinance their bonds. It's going to save approximately $270,000 over the next 10 years. So it's great. A bunch of communities are doing it with the Alaska Municipal, or excuse me, not the Alaska Municipal League, but Alaska Bond Bank. And yeah, there's not much besides that to say.
Hold on. Just wanted the people listening at home to have a clearer version than the long paragraph that it was, so thank you.
Sure.
With that, I'll start on, I think it's Jepson, and this time Member Mucci. Anything to contribute?
Nothing here.
Thank you, sir. Member Tremblay?
No comment.
Thank you, Member Tremblay. Member Morrell?
No comment.
Thank you, Member Morrell. Mayor Jensen?
It makes a lot of sense to me, and thanks to the finance director for being on top of this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Jensen. Member Norheim?
No, it's good. Save a little money.
Absolutely. Thank you, Member Norheim. And Member Lynn?
I just echo, thank you, Carl and Jody. This is a follow-up of something that we did at SEPA, and it's significant savings for the borough. So thank you for going through with it.
Thank you, Member Lynn. I echo the comments made here, and I'm in full support, and I'm glad this is coming forward. So the clerk, please call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Thank you.
And it passes unanimously. All right. That brings us on to item 16, communications. We have 3 items that are in the record. This is correct, Clerk Thompson. The Reduced Plastic Use Petersburg letter, the Ron Bushman email, and the Paul Bless email. They will be on the record for citizens to view, yes?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. That can be viewed on the Borough website or on the meeting agenda. Which brings us to Mr. Chair. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd just like to make one comment. I appreciate people sending communications to us and having entered into the record. But I would just like to say a letter from the members of Reduced Plastic Use in Petersburg. I really appreciate a name with that, just to know who is sending the letters. That helps me to know what kind of support it really has, instead of just a group without any number of members to it or the names associated. And we've addressed this in the past, but I'd like to thank people for sending in their comments.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. Appreciate it. That brings us down to simply discussion items. Item 17A, quarantine mandate and upcoming visitors to Petersburg. Assembly wishes to discuss the governor's quarantine mandate for incoming travelers and how it will affect our lodges, cruise ships, processors, fishing industry, deckhands, etc. I guess it's other end of the table. Member Lynn.
I'll pass for now. Thank you.
Great. Member Norham.
I don't know the mandate. My understanding was that he wasn't blocking the travel, but because of the 14-day quarantine, he made it more or less really expensive to continue to come up here. I don't know, that's about it. I think the processors are probably working around what they can do to get their workers in here safely. As far as the lodges go, I do not know. I believe the bear hunters kind of got shut down for that part of their probably spring visitors. But yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Member Norham. Mayor Jensen.
Yeah, I kind of asked that we have this discussion, and after asking to put it on the agenda, one industry thought I was targeting them specifically, and I'm not. I just think as a community, as the cruise ship industry, but I think we need to keep on top of it. I know we will. The governor's mandates and what people can do when they come to town, and the way I currently read it, if you come to town from out of state, you're automatically mandated 14 days. So I don't know what that would mean if you'd have to stay on your yacht or cruise boat or what have you. But I guess we'll see as things progress here. I believe the governor's mandate for that 11 and 12 may expire on the 11th. So that would be this coming Saturday. So I just think it's something we need to be aware of, and how we could but limit the number of people that come and can potentially wander around through town that aren't screened, I guess, to say. So anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. Yeah, we've been keeping an eye on that too, to see if we can re-up that mandate. And there was one set to expire, but I'm hoping we re-up on that. Over to Member Morrell.
Yeah, I don't have much to say on this other than I know that here at ISO we've been working hard on the plan. But that being said, the way to limit the number of traffic coming in here would be for locals to apply to help us during the salmon season and come help the process. Sure. So that's my 2 cents.
Well said. Thank you, Member Morrell. Member Tremblay.
I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen. I also am echoing back with what Bill mentioned earlier, that the mandate right now is kind of the standard for the mandate is a little bit lower than where we need to be thinking about this all conceptually on a person-to-person level. We need to be thinking how we should be behaving, not how we are allowed to behave when it comes to being safe and keeping each other safe. So I hope that we're able to get a good dialogue going with our federal delegation, because the fact that some states still have not even issued stay-at-home mandates, let alone have widespread testing available nationwide, means that this is only going to be a longer and longer issue. And so I'm sure the state mandate will continue. We don't know how it's going to happen. The cruise ships are adjusting their systems, like they're tied up right now, at least the ones that I'm in contact with, and I know that a lot of people are doing a workplace solution, but I would also hope that this can be an opportunity for community solutions, because I see this with lodges, processors, and I see people that will have empty beds and people that might need places to send their people for isolation periods, including deckhands on fishing boats. I'm starting to get messages from friends wondering how they're going to be up here and isolate before joining crew who are coming all over. So I hope that this is a community conversation. I hope that we're able to support each other. But I just have to echo Phil that we need to be thinking about this in a deeper interpersonal systemic level, not just what the governor says, and this is really only the beginning of a discussion.
Thanks, Member Tremblay. Member Meacham.
Nothing here, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. I'll just briefly weigh in on it. I know it's an extraordinarily obvious statement, but this situation is so fluid right now. Evolving every day. I really wanted to thank you. One particular statement Incident Commander Hagerman made earlier. This isn't a week long or a couple of weeks we've been managing this situation. We're talking months. That's just an objective reality right now. And for one, I'm very grateful for right now that the processors are thinking very hard and very seriously about how to deploy people safely. Their plans are fluid as well. So they're responding to constantly changing things also. But for those listening at home, know that they are taking it very seriously. I'm glad. I'm grateful for our neighbors in the processing industry thinking about us as neighbors and thinking about themselves as neighbors too. And I know both Trident and PFI will be, or MyCircle will be keeping this abreast of their plans. And I know for myself, speak for Director Hagerman, he looks forward to working with them and finding a solution that keeps us all safe. Let's keep a close eye on it. Let's open the floor randomly. Anybody else want to chime in on it at this point?
Mr. Mayor, this is Carl.
Thank you, Carl. Go right ahead.
Thank you. So I just wanted to bring the Assembly's attention to a quarantine matrix chart that we provided on our website and posted on Facebook. It's a very complicated to keep up with all of the mandates, and so we put the chart together for a couple reasons. First of all, of course, the guidance to people that have workers coming to town or fishermen that are coming to town, where they want to know where they stood in all of the mandate language. So the chart actually does a pretty good job of just boiling it down to specific groups of people and whether they're coming to town from within the state or from out of the state, and what the requirements in the mandates, the state's mandates, would have on them. So it's a very good resource to use. I would encourage anybody listening to go to our website and look for the quarantine matrix chart link on the front page and take a look at that. The second purpose is, and it's really more of a management tool, is to see what holes there are in the quarantine process. Phil's comments earlier of being as restrictive as we possibly can are is something we should heed. It is a fact that if we have an outbreak in Petersburg, we're going to overwhelm our healthcare system very quickly, and that will be a bad thing for everyone involved. So this chart actually shows us where the holes are in the mandate language that has been provided by the state. For instance, tourship passengers that are coming into Petersburg from within the state, those are obviously non-essential purpose, but the mandates are moved except to say that non-essential interstate travel is prohibited. So they're not even contemplating that people will book a trip in Southeast Alaska and trying to be traveling between communities. So it's very hard, and those are the types of things that it would be great to tighten up on and clarify either at the state level if these mandates are extended after April 11th. Hopefully that the state will do a better job of writing the next version. Also, if we are able to be considered a small community after the correspondence that was sent to the state's governor's office and health officials last week, that's something that we can take on and try to clarify and make it a little tighter for those conditions. And there's a fine line line between shutting down all economy and protecting our community. And it's a balance. But the balance, the scale is leaning heavily towards protecting our community right now. And I hope everybody realizes that and understands that we're not trying to shut down any one group or economy. It's about flattening the curve. And hopefully we'll be able to come out with some recommendations for further mandates if the state allows it, or maybe they'll change what they have in place right now. But the language in the mandates with the state very clearly that those mandates supersede any local mandates is very troublesome for trying to plug those holes that we see in the chart. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for chiming in on that. And please keep all of us in the loop with your work with the state and trying to get us an exemption for that or any other developments that can give us greater power to take necessary steps. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right. That brings us down to assembly members' comments on any topic. I'll just open the floor to that if anybody has anything they want to add on anything else.
Yes, Mr. Mayor? If I may?
Go right ahead, number one. Yep, go right ahead, number one.
Thank you. I've got two items I'd like to talk about. One is that I've been contacted by a number of people outside of town, both out the road and off island, about trying to sign up for Code Red. They get to a certain point and then they can't put the information in. I've talked to Sandy about it, and I know at least one of those people have also talked to Sandy, and she's told me she's going to follow up and get that information out. So for those people who have talked to me, we have followed through, and Sandy is also following through with the Code Red folks to see if we can solve the problems that were identified. First item. Second item, I'd like to encourage, since this is the time that we're all kind of isolated from one another, I would encourage anybody who wants to talk to us, please send us a letter, send me a note, any of us on the telephone, what have you. I encourage that. At least we know, and then we know where the interests are, where the concerns are, and so forth. Please do so. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Well said, number one. Well said. Any other assembly member comments before we move on to recognitions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. Go right ahead. Richie.
Thank you. Hey, I guess the question is kind of for Carl and or Phil. So if we get to a point in the community where we do have an outbreak, what would be the next step? Would there be further restrictions on movement, or what's the thinking there?
Mr. Mayor, I can answer this. This is Carl.
Sure, please, thank you.
Yeah, so, yes, if we do have an outbreak that is very difficult for us to manage, in terms of mandating further activity, there are things that the Assembly can do that I believe were not mentioned in the governor's mandates, and therefore wouldn't be a prohibition for us to take action on. Things such as curfew, for instance. I think that has its place. Right now, we're heavily relying on our population to operate on the honor system and do what they can in meeting the terms of the mandates. A curfew, if it's put in place, is just one more step towards restricting people's non-essential movement in the community. Again, there's with every restriction, every mandate, there's allowances for essential activities that have to occur. So it's very difficult to answer this question with any certainty on exactly what things could look like, but we could enforce a curfew or try to enforce a curfew to keep people off the streets. But at this point, there's not too many more steps that we can take.
Carl, can I add to that just a little bit?
Absolutely. Thanks, Phil. Thank you.
Yeah, so each under the incident command system, we have operational periods, and in that operational period, we could add that as an action item. I think it's a very good question to answer as this progresses, and Carl, I'm sure we would be looking at that those next steps as well. We're looking at those from the surge capacity, and then Carl will be looking at those from just like you were asking on the community side.
Thank you, Bill. Did that answer your question, Member Mucci?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Mayor Johnson, were you waiting to chime in? I thought I heard you before.
Yeah, I did. And, I'd just like to thank Paul for working with the state and with Senator Stedman's office, and I was involved a little bit in some of those phone calls, and hopefully we could get Petersburg to up the number of the population that you count for the rural community, and we will be able to potentially, if we need to, impose some restrictions of our own. I know some people don't care for that idea, but I think as isolated as we are, I think it's important. One other thing I would like to bring up under some of the comments is what's talked about earlier in this meeting about the 2 phone calls to the Conference of Mayors this week. I will forward that email I got to the clerk, and she could share it with Member Stanton Greger, and between now and those calls, maybe we can get some ideas from the team and assembly members on what we should ask our federal delegation on the second phone call in particular on Friday the 10th, because that will be with the congressional delegation. So it'll be a good time to ask them some questions and get them thinking about our needs and things to do. That's it.
Does that make sense to you, Clerk Thompson?
Yes, it does.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Clerk Thompson, on that one. Okay. That'll bring us down to recognitions then. I'll just go free for all. Anybody go right ahead.
Mr. Mayor,
yes, go ahead, Darrell, please.
I think we absolutely have to recognize the incident command team, both at the borough level and at the hospital, for the work they're doing right now. It is amazing. The work that the hospital has taken on and the planning that they are doing is really protecting us all. So a big thanks to them, as well as anybody on my team. Everybody's pitching in, as much as they can, whenever they can, and it's really a community effort right now, and I appreciate everyone very much. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Carl, and absolutely, I feel comfortable speaking for us right now. Like, for the whole community, we're grateful for everyone's efforts, both in the professional capacity and the civilians. Everyone's trying to do their best. I couldn't agree with everything you said more. Thank you, Carl. Before I entertain a motion to adjourn, this is a point of clarification for the Assembly. After we adjourned, stay on your lines while Clerk Thompson readies prepares to switch over to the special meeting agenda. And we'll follow her direction when she's ready, and then we'll begin that one as well. So, with that, I'm entertaining a motion.
I'm sorry, I have a quick recognition.
Of course.
Okay. In light of the CDC recommendations that people wear cloth masks or masks in general in public spaces, I'd like to thank all the sewers in town who are busy making cloth masks. And if you are in need of a mask, hopefully we can get a good, maybe the EOC could have a standardized where to get a cloth mask response so that everyone who is needing one would be able to get one. I know that they're prioritizing different groups in town based on need, but thank you to everyone who's really sewing away, and hopefully we get those masks into folks' hands and proper protocol is followed so people stay safe out there.
Thank you, Member Tremblay. With that, Yep, go right ahead. I'll stay quiet till you guys are done. Go ahead.
Just a quick thing. I know there's lots of people to thank right now, the essential workers. I just wanted to thank my buddies down at TU there, Chris, Lyman, and Pulaski. You guys are doing good work. We appreciate it. Thank you guys for your service and keeping the food rolling.
Right on. Thank you, Member.
Yeah, I had a recognition too. I'd like to thank, yes it is. I'd like to thank the Lighthouse Church. I'd like to thank the Lighthouse Church for thinking outside the box on ways to keep our children entertained and putting on the drive-in movie.
Yeah, it's a great service they're providing. Thank you. I'm glad you recognize that. Okay. I'm going to tentatively speak up and say I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Member Moore, seconded by Jensen. All those in favor say aye. 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 That meeting is adjourned. Sit tight on your phones until Clerk Thompson's ready for us. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.